Hey, what's up, Cosmetic family?
Thanks for joining us on the Cosmetic Podcast.
Cosmetic means being a person or thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that is dynamic or energizing.
We're tackling topics and telling the truth.
I'm Keith Benson.
And I'm Rodrigo Ross.
So today we have the one and only Mr. Steve Tarver, the president and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Louisville. Now I'm not from Louisville. Was it Louis or Louis? How do I want to make sure I'm getting this right, Steve. How do we say that?
Yeah, if you call it Louisville, you could be in trouble in Louisville. So it's Louisville.
Louisville. Okay. I truly just got educated just then.
So that phantom egg will get you every time, Keith. That phantom egg. Yeah.
So our topic today is personal paradigm. And like I said, we're talking to Steve Tarver, the president and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Louisville. And so, Steve, I want to start off, the YMCA, you've been around the Y for a while. And this pandemic, of course, is new to everybody. What was it like when you entered into that March day and that word came across that we couldn't do anything? What was that like for you? And then walk us a little bit maybe through the journey up until where you all are now.
Well, we like everybody else got through it. We first announced a 2-week closure, and we thought, okay, no problem. We've got the ability and we've got the finances to get through that. So we'll just follow the recommendations. We'll do the right thing and we'll do it. And of course, that turned into months of out of service. And frankly, we shifted from a 2-week closure that would be relatively easy to navigate to wondering, are we even going to be here a year from now? Wow. So we shifted from just a temporary closure to a survival mode. And with that came all the many devastatingly difficult decisions that had to be made. But we tried to keep our eye on the ball. We want to be here a year from now. We don't do anybody any good if we just disappear. And so that created, some of the difficult decisions that other YMCAs and companies and businesses and others had to deal with relative to people, to facilities, to finances, and things like that. So we rolled up the sidewalks and just kept our eye on the ball. And I got to tell you, I had my days of joy and I had my days of tears going through that. And people ask me, what was the most difficult part of that pandemic experience? And clearly the answer is easy. There's no close second. And that is the decisions that we had to make relative to people, particularly our staff. And, that continues to haunt us today. And I got to tell you, my sleeping patterns have changed dramatically over the past year.
I can imagine. I remember that day and I was like, before, man, the Y would never close. That's just, never with a Y close. But man, that day did come and I was astonished, but when our doors closed, we began to be able to do some different work. What was some of the work that you all accomplished? What were some of the greatest accomplishments during that time?
Well, we were able to maintain a reasonably healthy financial status. So we went into it with a healthy balance sheet. That gave us a big advantage. We did close down things and we did cut loose a lot of staff, more than we would have ever dreamed of. But again, survival was our motivation at that point. So a couple of things. We have a 40-year-old teen runaway shelter that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for teens that are in trouble, neglected. We were an early adopter of a safe place to be. In fact, it's called Safe Place, YMCA Safe Place Services. And we were an early adopter of working with teens that were kicked out of their houses because they were coming out as gay or, et cetera, et cetera. So that operation has not missed a single day of serving youth throughout the pandemic.
Wow.
We had 6 children wake up with us. This makes me very emotional, but we had 6 children wake up with us on Christmas morning, this past Christmas, and everything in between. And so that, and then we were called by the state of Kentucky to be a statewide partner in providing essential child care through the YMCA networks here in Louisville, as well as across our state. And so we quickly, as many did, and I know your YMCA did, shifted to essential childcare. We operate in 2 states, so we were following Indiana guidelines and we were following Kentucky guidelines, and we were just trying to take care of children. So we did that, and then we reopened back in June. It's been slow, but we've had some success with grants. We had a Stay With Us campaign where and our members and program participants, on our most down days, they kept us uplifted because of the way the Y does it. And this Y, by the way, happens to be the 10th YMCA started in the United States. We go back to 1853. So we have a very rich and diverse heritage in the area. And so we did that. And then, of course, again, like many Ys, we had thousands of virtual opportunities for people to stay connected. Our camp folks taught people how to make hobo stew at home. And when we finally got kids back in the water, that was a treat. So that was that. We made, again, not necessarily uniquely, but we made thousands of calls to our friends, neighbors, and members, doing welfare calls and engagement calls and things like that. We were not a direct provider of food, but we certainly were engaged in that with our school system and with our county government in that regard. And then we have one facility that had only operated for 90 days prior to the shutdown, but it was a dream of ours to have a community integrated health facility. So it includes a bank, a rehabilitation center, a medical clinic for pediatrics and adult medicine, and a mental health partner. And so that, and our partners were able to continue to operate on an uninterrupted basis as well. So we supported them when we were not open, and making sure that people had access to their services, and part of our integrated nature of this particular thing, which was a big, huge deal for us, is built around the concept of equity.
Yeah. So you guys were not bored during the pandemic. Like, Louisville was doing some incredible stuff in the same vein as what it was doing before the pandemic. But here's the question. And I will admit, this is from a personal place of struggle. So pandemic pounds are real. Like, at least they're real to me. And I know that you have a steep background, right? And for Keith too, I'm gonna tell it. He got some pandemic pounds too. But I know you have a healthy, robust story background in health and wellness. However, I know you got a cheat meal. I know there's one in you. What are your cheat foods and meals? Like, what do you eat? And you eating, and you're like, I know I should not be eating this, but it's so delicious.
Well, I got to tell you, I could live off of Coca-Cola, Fritos, and potato chips if it had no nutritional impact.
No, I did not think you were going to say that.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm an advocate of physical activity.
Yeah.
And I believe nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And I'm a nutrition moderation person. I don't penalize myself if I have a Coca-Cola, or if I have some potato chips. I don't scold myself or do anything like that. I might go out and add an extra mile to a run or something. But so I'm a common sense. And I'm a fan of aggregate activity. It doesn't have
activity,
and that means taking the stairs instead of taking the elevator.
Okay.
or, or taking the, or going, and when I go to Target, going through the push doors instead of the automatic doors, because a push door, you'll burn an extra half calorie. And I'm at my age, I want to burn every calorie I can. And so, I try to be a common sense person around that. And I'm also trying to expand my definition of health, around the social determinants of health, not just personally, but in terms of our work in the community. That part has truly been a paradigm shift for me. Thanks to a mentor of mine who became our health department director and ultimately a very close friend of mine and mentor on the area of health equity. And I will make a confession that I'm embarrassed to make. I have been for 20 or 25 years of my career, I've been a health and well-being guy on that side of the Y. And I thought if you wanted to be healthy, that you need to just change the way you make a few of your decisions. And what I learned with the equity model, again, I get emotional over this too, is that everybody in our community does not enjoy the same access to healthy choices that other people do. There's data, there's clear data to do that. That's why these pandemics that we're coming out of, hopefully, are not disconnected. They are connected. They are connected by equity and people's access to healthy choice. And I don't mean just healthy to be physically active. I'm talking in terms of the social determinants of health. And and I get a little impatient. Everybody's throwing around the equity or health equity terminology. And I think there's still a need out there to look at that from an academic standpoint. So when we're talking equity, we need to understand what that concept is. And I know that word is being thrown around everywhere. And I'm cautious about that because when I say equity, that may or may not be consistent with what somebody else means when they say equity. And I'd love to see everybody get on the same page.
That would be amazing. And Keith, the next time you see me eating potato chips, I don't want to hear a word from you. I'm like, Steve said so. He gave me permission.
Steve,
My only question would be is
aggregate.
Sorry.
Aggregate exercise, was that it?
Aggregate activity.
Activity.
Okay. I had to write that one down. I'm gonna have to save that one right there. I like that. I mean, but those simple things, right? Like pushing the door instead of walking through the automatic door, parking in the back of the parking lot, instead of riding around 30 minutes trying to find the one next to the handicapped parking spot.
Right.
Like those little things matter. So my question is, so how can we improve the health of our community? Like, what is the big vision? What is the big bold goal of improving the health of our community?
Well, I still say that number one, understanding the aspects of health. In other words, health is more than just, a healthy, physically healthy. In fact, I default to the mission of the Y, spiritually, mentally, and physically. In fact, the World Health Organization and one of their definitions of health speak to the harmonious balance of mental, spiritual, and physical health. And I thought, boy, that looks familiar. And so I look at that. So in addition to the physical activity, and I'll quote a past director of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Tom Frieden. He says, activity is the new wonder drug. And that's real. And I mean, I've talked to people, you've got people at your Y right now that have changed their life through regular, and frequency is more important than intensity, regular physical activity, the potential reduction in pharmaceutical medicine and prescriptions could be dramatically reduced if we could just get everybody to, commit to 20 to 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week of moderate to vigorous physical activity of any kind.
Wow. That's intriguing because the frequency part, I always thought, okay, I'll miss a bunch of days, but then if I go and work out really hard for 2 hours, 1 day a week, it's the same. But listening to you, not so much. It's not the same. Well,
the research indicates you begin to lose physical, acuity, if you will, after about 96 hours. That's why the frequency thing has a role to play in this. Now, intensity, there's research that gives very good marks to vigorous to high intensity exercise, but that's very, very difficult for the average person to maintain over time. It just wears you out. And, but let's also not forget the other things that go with that. That's healthy relationships. That's, caring about others. That's paying it forward. All those things that also uplift you and provide joy in all of our lives.
Oh, I love to hear you say that. And that's so in line. So last year, when not only were we dealing as a country with the pandemic, but all of the social unrest and all of the turmoil that created, there were a number of online events that were sponsored by different YMCAs and different groups within the YMCA. And you happened to be on a panel of one of them. And I was so enamored. I was clapping and just jumping out of my seat because I could appreciate the transparency, right? And the candor when you talked about being on your learning edge, that for as much as you knew, you were really in this learning and growth phase and this realization and some of the things that made you so sad. And now you're talking about the equity piece, right? And social determinants of health. So how is this journey for you? Like this new realization and being transparent, like what's it like to be you these days?
Well, it is a learning journey. And I think leadership and learning go right together. And I tell all of our staff, and I do quite a bit of training and so forth, that leadership is a journey that never ends. And learning goes with that. And on this, and we've been on the equity journey a while, but we also had the social unrest here in Louisville. We were unfortunately the home of the Breonna Taylor tragedy. And if you recall on that thing, on that panel that I was on, only by the hand of God did I have the opportunity to respond to something that I had said earlier, because our panel got interrupted because somebody else's schedule changed. And I had a chance to come back, and they asked me before we came back on, would you like to respond to this somewhat critical statement that I called the Breonna Taylor tragedy, the Breonna Taylor thing, and how it had been difficult on our community. Somebody said it's more than a thing, and they were right. And only due to the hand of God did I have a chance to apologize and to express my appreciation for that feedback and for the opportunity to respond, because had the schedule gone as it had originally been planned, I would not have had the opportunity to receive that feedback nor respond to it. And, nobody's got as much to learn as I do. I got to say.
And that was the turning point, Steve, that moment there when I watched and I saw how truly genuine and authentic you were, and you were willing to push past that fear and model that behavior, right? For some other folks. That was it. That's when I was like, oh, I'm getting the Steve Tarver t-shirt. I'm officially a part of the fan club.
Well, it was a lot of fans behind that. A lot of fans behind that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, to God goes the glory, because that was a set of circumstances that probably wouldn't happen again if we did it 100 times over.
So Steve, I know that you, like you said, to God be the glory for that. And I know that you speak and hold true to the C within the YMCA. And so how do you see the Christian values of the Y crossing over to acceptance to all?
Well, that's a very good and difficult question. And I believe as a CEO, one of my roles is to set the seed in the appropriate place in our local YMCA, because, that looks a little different depending on where you are in the country.
Yes, sir. So
I believe that's number one of my most significant obligations to the organization. Number two is I believe that we are, and I tell our staff, we're not a church, we're not a denomination, but we are rooted in the Christian example. So the question of what would Christ do is real to us. And it converts to righteousness and justice. And, and my HR person and some of our program people don't like it when I say this, but my policy and procedure manual has two statements: act in good faith and seek to do the right thing. And that's it. And, now that doesn't fly well in some of the regulatory arenas and stuff like that.
Imagine.
But when we have a dilemma, the first question that I ask, and I try to get others to ask, is, all right, let's talk about what is the right thing to do. And then we decide when you fill in the broader framework, we decide what we are going to do. But, the fundamental starting point is, what do we believe is the right thing to do? And so, that is, that's that. I don't believe the Y is intended to be an evangelical thing, but I believe that we uphold it. And I encourage our staff to pray, those that are comfortable doing that. I have a basic request that any meeting of the YMCA start with more, I prefer a little more than just an invocation, but I like to include a message if there's time, and a prayer in some tradition. And it really doesn't matter to me what that tradition is. And we never, of course, ask anybody that's not comfortable doing it to do it. But I think it's important, and I think it differentiates us. When we have construction meetings with men and women in hard hats and steel-toed boots, when you have a prayer to open up a meeting like that, that's not what they commonly see. But I truly believe that when we have a problem with a construction, I believe the fact that we set that environment helps us problem solve. It helps us reduce conflict, and it sets the environment for things like that to occur with less disruptive and contradictory kinds of things.
I love it. I love it. So we have been talking to a number of CEOs during this CEO series, and one of the things that we are noticing that's a running theme is this idea of it can be a little bit lonely at the top. And so CEOs have to have definitive ways of how they rejuvenate and re-energize. And we've heard all kinds of things, to playlists, to brisket cooking, roller skating, and all kind of stuff. So you got to tell us, Steve, what do? You got to top all the rest of these things that we've already heard. Like, what do you do in your free time to just rejuvenate and get re-energized? TikTok videos. Is it TikTok videos?
No, I try to get outside. I'm a water skier. And so I like to get on a boat, and if I can be on a boat, that's my greatest relaxation, particularly if it includes some family and friends. And I do like to water ski. I occasionally will do that barefooted, and so that people think that's pretty cool. It's not really that cool, but it's.
I think that's pretty cool.
Don't know too many barefoot water skiers.
I don't know too many water skiers, period. Oh, that's pretty. So you do tricks and stuff like?
No, I don't do a lot of tricks, but
with one hand and one foot and none of that.
Well, I can do different things, but I'm nothing special. But to your point about the need to have something to retreat to on occasion is very important. And I'm an optimist. I'm committed to seeing the assets. We have a rule in our office that if you're in the hallway having a conversation and somebody says, well, what if we stand on our head for 10 seconds every day when we come in the office before we sit down at our desk? The rule in our office is the first 10 comments need to be reasons why it's a good idea and the idea will work. Now, we don't ignore barriers. We don't ignore resources. But, the natural tendency is, what if we do this or that? And people tear it down, or they say it costs too much, and maybe it does. But that's a really bad starting point to have a conversation when, there's creativity and optimism around you. So we gotta make that work.
Yeah, I need to come there and have some conversations in Louisville. I like that. Yes.
Well, you're welcome anytime. We got this horse track too that is here in Louisville that I'll be happy to take you to and wander around Churchill Downs.
You have just made my day, because I have these shoes that are amazing, and I've been looking for a reason to get a hat and an outfit. And so I am there next year. Did you hear that, Keith? I'm going. Kentucky Derby, here I come.
I try to get through a podcast without her saying something about shoes. And
not gonna happen.
All right, so I have a question here. I had to do a little digging. And so I understand you always say, what does what you do? Now they have another part here, but I don't know if it's worded properly. So I'm gonna say it and you can tell me if it's not, you can fill in the rest. Do our inside in Louisville is all about the do. That didn't make sense to me. So I didn't know if there was some more to that right there.
Well, that came out of part of my transformation starting back in 2008, where there were some things that kind of converged. I was being schooled in health equity by this mentor. The new Y brand was introduced in 2010. And I will tell you, it hasn't just changed me, it has transformed me. And so when we had the brand and brought us under a single language, a single set of behaviors that we aspire to, and the idea that we shifted from, I call it looking from the inside out and just waiting for people to come to the Y, to looking at ourselves from the outside in. So it's not about what the Y needs, it's about what the community needs and where the Y can intersect with that. So we have this thing we do with our staff that says, it's not about what you do, it's about what you do does. So I'll give you the classic, if you don't mind, a quick story, just to what I'm talking about. So we were doing our early training on the new brand. We did not allow anybody to display this new logo until we trained our 2,000 staff. So we had this exercise. What do you do? So I'm partnered with a young lady. She was an early morning lifeguard. So she saw mostly lap swim. I said, what do you do? She says, I'm a lifeguard. I said, well, what does that do? She says, well, I keep the aquatic environment safe. I said, well, what does that do? She says, well, if the aquatic environment's safe, the people who come in can get a good workout and worry a little less about the safety of the environment. I said, okay, well, what does that do? She says, well, if all that happens, I guess they can go to work, they'll be refreshed. And now you hear she's not talking about herself anymore. She's talking about who she serves.
Right.
So she said, I guess they can go to work. They'll be more refreshed. They'll be absent less. They'll be more productive. And, that's a good thing. I said, well, if all that takes place, what do you think happens when it comes time to give raises? She said, well, I guess if all that happens, they'll get a higher raise. I said, well, what does that do? She says, I guess they'll be able to provide better economically for their family. I said, you know what? You're not a lifeguard. You are a director of family economic resource development. And so,
yes.
So we, of course, in Louisville, what does what you do became do. So everybody giggles about it. So, but that's the do that we talk about. And it's it makes people smile and it makes people think. But I mean, we take people and we take people through this exercise until the point they come up with a new job description. And, we've got a director of smiles. We've got a director of letting the children know that they're loved. And we've got things like that where we shift in more common language, we shift from the transactional to the transformational.
Yes, sir.
Or what I call going from activity to impact.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I'm going to be the director of Smiles here in Dallas, Keith. Go ahead and send that email out.
All right. You see, you just made me lose my thought. You said you say instead of transaction to transformation, you said from activity to
Impact.
activity to impact. Okay. Now I don't normally take notes like this, Steve, but you just said some things right here that I'm gonna have to at least borrow. Then after about the third time, it's mine. So you know.
I'm going to tell you every time he borrows it, Steve, so that you can get a residual check. No,
No,
he can just take your stuff.
I'll tell you, I don't know that I've ever had an original thought in my entire life. And that's what I love about the Y. We're great, burglars of other people's good ideas. And I'm right at the top of that list.
Keith is definitely thieving today. He is definitely. I do this again, Keith, in a conversation between you and I'm going to really give you a side eye. I really am. Because I know where it came from.
Steve, your thought pattern is like, what is that transformational work? Because a lot of times in any of the roles, whether that's a lifeguard, whether that's an instructor, group X, I mean, they think about that thing that they just do within that space, but not that impact that makes. And so when we talk about somebody who's coming into our space and we're able to help them to get a better quality of life and be healthy, like what's the impact, not just even on their immediate family, but that's really changing the trajectory of what their generations to come will be. And so I just love it. And I love the, just the, what does your do and to make people think about in a deeper way than just that square box that they work in.
Yeah, I agree. That's exceptional, especially in an organization where you're really trying to, and to the furthest reaches, help people understand that we're cause driven, that we are an impact centered organization, really helping people understand. That could be like an excellent interview question to get at folks, so that you're making sure you're bringing the right folks in the fold. Like, you got all kinds of wheels spinning for us here, Steve.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I don't know. I'm a beneficiary of the Y. I'm a debtor to the Y. The harder I work, the more I receive in return. I could never repay it back if I worked for 100 more years.
That's so excellent. So if you've been in a Y, you have so many stories, so many experiences, so many opportunities that you've taken advantage of to shift and turn and course correct and all that. But through all of that, what is the one thing that you are completely unapologetic about in your Y career? Like, sorry, not sorry, I did it and I'll do it again.
Well, I think the idea of trying to keep the mission at the top of the mountain of the Y. I believe our mission is our distinguishing feature. I believe our mission is, and the way our staff and family represent the mission is our greatest, from a business standpoint, our greatest strategic advantage. And like many YMCAs, we've got people that identify the Y as a community, as a family. You got people that say the Y saved our life. And, the staff of the Y are part of my extended family, we hear. And, so we've got to keep that alive. We've got to keep the brand platform, the mission, the purpose, the values, the personality. Those are real things. And if we become just focused on the fact that I'm lining a soccer field, then we've lost that and we become commoditized.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, one of the things that I'm unapologetic about is that I stopped what I was doing on this day to take advantage of talking to the one and only Steve Tarver, President and CEO of the YMCA of Louisville. Thank you so much, sir, for your candor and your authenticity and really being an amazing pace setter for all of us in the country. This has been awesome.
Yes, sir. Well, yes, sir.
It is my honor, and it's an honor to meet both of you and to be uplifted by you. So I owe you much more than you've given to me.
Well, thank you, sir. And thank you everyone for listening to Cosmetic,
where we're tackling topics and telling the truth.
Subscribe and listen to us weekly.
And don't be shy, give us a review.
And as always,
be dynamic.
Be phenomenal.
Be cosmetic.